The asphalt shimmered under the afternoon sun, a black mirror reflecting the oppressive heat of a rural Alabama summer. The apex quick stop on the dusty stretch of Highway 42 was more than a gas station. It was the nerve center of Hickory Creek. It was a place where local gossip flowed as freely as cheap coffee, and unspoken rules governed who belonged and who didn't. She didn't look like a threat. That was their first and loudest mistake. Ilera Vance stepped out of her silver SUV, a vehicle streaked with the pollen of 1,000 miles, its tires humming a low, road-weary tune. She was a quiet woman in faded jeans and a plain jacket, with her curls unstyled, her head kept low. To the men lounging by the pumps, she was just another outsider, a passing shadow in a town that prided itself on knowing everyone. The first comment, a casual punch of cruelty, flew like an errant stone. She lost, or just looking for trouble? A local mechanic named Cyrus Reed snickered, nudging his friend. They all laughed, including Officer Thorne, who was off duty but wore his authority like a second skin, sipping from a huge soda cup. Ilera didn't flinch. She simply walked toward the convenience store, her gaze fixed, her posture steady. The cashier, Brenda Sutton, a woman with a perpetually flat expression, stopped her before she could enter. "Restrooms for customers only," she muttered, a rule she hadn't enforced on a single person all day. The laughter from outside grew louder. They made jokes about her car, about her clothes. One of them even pretended to lock his truck. Ilera felt the familiar sting of it, the constant erosion of dignity, but she let it pass. Every slight, every coded insult disguised as a joke wasn't just wrong. It was a data point. What none of them realized was that the woman they were mocking wasn't Traveler. She was a DEA special agent, a ghost in their machine who had been investigating this town for months. Ilera wasn't here for gas. She was here for civil rights violations, for racial profiling, for the bleeding corruption that infected every corner of Hickory Creek. The SUV she drove wasn't random, and neither was she. The entire gas station security camera system had been replaced 2 weeks ago by a federal order. To them, she was a non-entity. To her, they were evidence. By sundown, Cyrus Reed and Officer Thorne would be in federal custody. Brenda Sutton would be subpoenaed, and that off-duty cop, Officer Thorne, would watch a video of himself go viral, played in courtrooms, newsrooms, and every police misconduct seminar for the next decade. All because they misjudged a woman who never raised her voice, never flinched, and never once had to say the 3 letters embroidered on the inside of her jacket. DEA. Ilera Vance had spent 12 years in federal law enforcement, but this assignment was different. This wasn't an op with a wire in her ear or a backup team down the street. It was personal. She was just a woman with a beat-up SUV, a prepaid burner phone, and a fake driver's license for a town that no longer existed. She rented a small unit on the edge of Hickory Creek, a place where the streetlights buzzed louder than the traffic, and everyone knew who didn't belong. To them, she was just another outsider, maybe down on her luck, maybe running from something. And that was the point. Her daily routine was a study in stillness. She fueled up at the Apex Quick Stop every 3 days, always at a different time, always paying exact cash. She'd sit in her car for hours, pretending to nap, while a hidden dash camera recorded every transaction, every idle conversation, every suspicious vehicle. She let the casual insults wash over her, a quiet presence absorbing the town's hostility. She'd already identified the key players. Officer Thorne, whose patrol logs were full of holes. Cyrus Reed, the mechanic rumored to fix more than just cars, with out-of-state vehicles often disappearing into the garage only to reappear with new titles. And Brenda Sutton, the manager, who never spoke a word but always seemed to be watching. Ilera filed weekly encrypted reports back to DEA headquarters, tagging surveillance clips and flagging suspicious behavior. She wasn't here to make arrests yet. She was here to build an airtight case, one that would withstand the scrutiny of a federal courtroom and break a chain of corruption that had flourished in plain sight for over a decade. What kept her grounded was the mission. She wasn't just there to take down one dirty cop or close one corrupt gas station. She was there to expose a machine, a system that relied on humiliation to protect its power, a system that mocked women like her and then panicked when those same women held the keys to its downfall. Every time someone smirked, rolled her eyes, or made a comment meant to make her feel small, Ilera smiled inside, because they were walking straight into her investigation. One gas receipt, one camera frame, one arrogant mistake at a time. It was a Tuesday afternoon when the pattern finally broke. A black pickup pulled in, its tailgate dragging as if weighed down. Two men got out, neither of them regulars. But one caught her eye. He wore a Hickory Creek sheriff's jacket, though Ilera knew for a fact he wasn't on the official roster. She had memorized it. This was a signal. It was layered. They weren't just operating a small-town shakedown. They were laundering identities and cash, using fake credentials to move under the radar. She kept her camera rolling from the dash as the two men went inside. They came out minutes later with brown paper bags, no receipts. They nodded to Cyrus Reed, who was suspiciously working on a squad car that belonged to no one on duty. Everything screamed back channel. That night, Ilera compiled her report in near darkness, her laptop screen dimmed, her phone in airplane mode. She uploaded the footage through a secure DEA portal, flagging the sheriff's jacket for verification. In less than 12 hours, she received a high-priority ping from DEA headquarters. The jacket matched one issued to an officer placed on leave for assault charges in another county. He wasn't just impersonating a cop. He was a fugitive. The case had just escalated from a civil rights investigation to a federal criminal conspiracy. Ironically, the final break came from an act of kindness. Elena, a young Latina woman who worked part-time at a register and always kept her head down, slipped Ilera a note on a gas receipt. It was subtle, scrawled in pencil. He moves money at closing behind the ice chest. That was it. No name, no explanation, just a quiet act of defiance. Elena had been watching, too. That evening, Ilera returned to the station, parking under a broken light post where shadows ran long. She waited. At exactly 8:57 p.m., the fake sheriff reappeared. He opened the back room, pulled out a small red cooler, and wheeled it toward the ice chest. Then, as casually as someone refilling soda, he popped the lid and began loading sealed, white packets. Drug trafficking. Plain and simple, hidden in plain sight. But he wasn't alone. Officer Thorne emerged from the side door, no uniform, just a tank top and jeans, but with the same lazy aggression that had humiliated her that first day. He nodded at the fake sheriff, reached into the cooler himself, pocketing one packet, and walked toward the parking lot. Ilera hit record. The frame captured everything. The handoff, the exchange, the location. When Thorne slid into the same unmarked vehicle she'd seen parked outside a mechanic shop days earlier, the entire chain of evidence snapped shut. She had them on camera, in conspiracy, using their positions to facilitate a criminal enterprise. But the risk was rising fast. She knew if anyone suspected her identity, her cover would dissolve. She left without drawing attention. Her camera is still recording. She drove to a nearby church parking lot, swapped the camera's SD card, sealed it, and mailed it to the DA using a pre-approved Dropbox. The irony wasn't lost on her, hiding truth inside what they thought was trash. The next morning, the town was unusually quiet. The gas station shutters stayed down until noon. Officer Thorne's cruiser was gone. That's when Ilera knew someone had felt her heat. Someone had either seen the camera or suspected they were being watched. Her cover was gone, but her timing was perfect. By then, the Bureau already had what they needed. When she walked out of her apartment, her SUV had been tampered with. The glove compartment was open. The dash camera lens was turned inward. A message. They knew. She activated her encrypted burner and sent a one-line message. It's go time. She decided to play boldly. She returned to the gas station at high noon. Brenda Sutton was behind the counter, her expression lifeless, but her eyes were watching. You don't look like someone who pumps gas for a living, Brenda said. A test. Ilera didn't blink. Neither do you. It was all the confirmation she needed. They were onto her. 2 blocks down, Thorne's cruiser appeared, no lights. Then, flashing reds. She pulled into an empty lot. Thorne, now in full uniform, tapped her window. License and registration, he said flatly. She handed him the fake documents. He looked at them, then leaned closer. You know, for someone not from here, you sure like to look at everything, kind of like someone taking notes. Alara gave a small smile. Maybe I just have a good memory. Thorne's grin vanished. Get out of the car. She stepped out slowly, hands visible, calm. You know what happens to people who start sniffing around here? He whispered, leaning in. They disappear. Gas station cameras break. Reports get lost. You keep poking around, we'll make you a ghost. Alara said nothing. In her jacket pocket, she had pressed a button on her wristband. The moment he touched her shoulder, the alert pinged. Live transmission. The DEA was listening. Is that supposed to scare me? She asked quietly. Before he could speak again, a silver SUV turned the corner. Then another. Then a third. All unmarked, all government plates. Thorne stepped back, his jaw twitching. He reached for his radio, but it was too late. The lead vehicle's door opened, and out stepped Special Agent Sterling, Alara's direct supervisor. His voice cut through the summer air like a knife. Officer Thorne, step away from the woman. She's one of ours. Thorne froze, his face a mask of disbelief. You what? Alara raised an eyebrow. You really thought I was just here for soda? Within minutes, chaos erupted. The DEA executed simultaneous warrants across town. The gas station, the mechanic shop, Thorne's home, even the sheriff's office. Everything Alara had collected was backed by live footage from mobile units and drone surveillance. They moved with a chilling precision. Agents retrieved records of false vehicle titles, stacks of unreported cash, and deleted body cam footage. At the gas station, Brenda Sutton was taken into custody. She didn't resist, just watched as they opened her office safe and pulled out packets of narcotics and a second cell phone full of encrypted texts. You think you could get away with this? Brenda muttered as they cuffed her. Alara walked past, her badge now clipped to her hip. No, I know we already did. As the sweep expanded, locals emerged from homes, drawn to the sirens and black SUVs. For the first time in years, the balance of power had visibly shifted. Phones came out. Live streams began. People stared at Alara, not with mockery this time, but with disbelief and dawning respect. One young girl whispered to her mother, "That's the lady they were laughing at." Her mom replied, "They're not laughing now." But the case wasn't over for Alara. Back in DEA headquarters, while the media ran loops of the now iconic raid, she sat reviewing a digital trail no one else had noticed. It was a payment, buried inside a seized burner phone, a deposit from a private security firm based in Washington, D.C. The same firm was a contractor for a defense company. The amount was significant, time-stamped exactly 1 day before the fake sheriff's visit. The label, Field Facilitation. It didn't make sense. Why would a government-adjacent company be funneling money into a backwater corruption ring? Unless this wasn't just about drugs. It was about covering federal malfeasance. Alara quietly requested a meeting with the Assistant Director of Intelligence. She laid it out plainly. The small-town officers weren't just acting rogue. They were facilitating a channel, a pipeline that reached federal contractors, the kind that thrives on surveillance and staying invisible. The director's face was still, but his eyes shifted. You're saying they weren't just protecting drugs or cash. They were protecting a system. What had started as a local corruption probe had just escalated into a national security conflict. Alara was given quiet clearance to pursue it off the books. She traced the payment back through layered LLCs and shell corporations, and it all led to one name, Ether Dynamics, a contractor specializing in domestic data filtration and site-level behavioral analysis. Translation: they help monitor people at gas stations, airports, and highways without anyone knowing. And they had active contracts with Homeland Security. Now it made sense. The gas station wasn't just a corruption site. It was a live testing environment for behavioral profiling software. Race, clothing, vehicle type, perceived agitation. It was all being tagged and analyzed. And the local cops, they were the human front for an algorithmic machine designed to label people as threats before they even spoke. What it looked like simple racial profiling wasn't just ignorance or hate. It was engineered discrimination, packaged as predictive technology and sold to federal agencies. Ilera brought the data to her supervisor. He looked like he'd been punched in the chest. We're talking lawsuits, congressional hearings, maybe even criminal charges. But the Bureau's silence began. Her files were locked. Her emails went unanswered. She wasn't being stopped outright. She was being iced out quietly, systematically. Most agents would have backed down. Ilera didn't. She took a risk, reaching out to a federal judge she'd once protected, someone who had the authority to trigger a sealed oversight review without alerting internal actors. He listened, then asked one question. Are you sure you want to pull this thread? It could cost people their jobs. It could change the game. I didn't come this far to protect a game, she said. Within a week, a formal subpoena was issued. Within 2 weeks, whistleblowers emerged. An ether dynamics engineer revealed the profiling software had been tested in 6 states without civilian consent. The DEA could no longer pretend it wasn't real. The Bureau publicly pivoted, doubling down on their original investigation. But behind the scenes, they quietly cleared Ilera to testify. She wasn't just the undercover agent anymore. She was the key witness in a growing national scandal. Her prepared statement before a closed-door Senate committee was short, precise, and unforgettable. I went undercover to investigate local racial profiling. What I found was a federally sanctioned program that turned suspicion into science and used that science to target communities of color in the name of safety. What happened to me at that gas station wasn't just personal. It was programmed. The fallout was swift. Ether Dynamics contracts were frozen. News outlets picked up the story, and the narrative shifted. This wasn't just about dirty cops. It was about algorithmic injustice and bias embedded in data. Civil rights attorneys began calling her the modern-day Erin Brockovich with a badge. But Ilera never sought fame. She stayed off camera, gave no interviews. She didn't need the spotlight. Her job was done. Instead, she visited Hickory Creek one last time. It had changed. The gas station was gone, rebuilt under a new name with bright lights, clean windows, and a large blue sign that read, Community First Fuel. The real change wasn't the concrete. It was in the people. A young woman, maybe 19 or 20, stepped out of the new storefront. She paused, then walked over. Ma'am, are you the one from the videos? Her voice was soft, uncertain. Ilera smiled. Depends on which video. The girl looked down, embarrassed. The one where you just stood there and let them talk down to you. And then she shook her head in wonder. You never raised your voice, but you brought them all down. That's what I remember. Ilera simply said, sometimes the strongest voice is the one that waits. The girl nodded. My brother got stopped here once just for walking. I used to think there was nothing anyone could do about that kind of thing. She smiled now, but you proved otherwise. Ilera watched her walk back inside. For the first time in a long time, she felt a peace she had earned, not because everything was fixed, but because the silence had been broken. And sometimes that's the most radical kind of justice. Ilera returned to DEA headquarters, not as the woman who went undercover, but as the woman who redefined what undercover work could mean. Her story was now part of Bureau training modules. How to expose corruption without compromising character. How to gather evidence without losing your humanity. She didn't care much for legacy. What she wanted, what she had always wanted, was for her presence to mean something, for her silence to carry weight, for her calm to be louder than fear. And in the end, it was... So to the ones who laughed at her at the gas station, who mocked her clothes, her voice, her silence, she didn't need to say, I told you so. Because they knew, and now the whole country did, too. And to anyone watching the story unfold, wondering if their own voice matters in a world that sometimes doesn't want to listen, her answer is simple. Yes, it does. Because sometimes the most powerful person in the room is the one everyone tried to overlook.